Ambassador Kethavar stood on the observation deck of Station Harmony, watching the gentle dance of 1,000 ships from 100 different worlds. The massive space station had served as the heart of galactic civilization for over 5 millennia. Here, disputes were settled with words, not weapons. Trade flowed freely between species that had once fought bitter wars. Children of different races played together in the station's gardens, their laughter echoing through corridors that had never known the sound of battle. The Zephyrian ambassador's crystalline form shimmered with contentment as he reviewed the day's agreements. 3 trade disputes resolved peacefully. 2 territorial boundaries redrawn through negotiation. 1 marriage alliance between the Corvani and the Stellar Collective approved. It was just another ordinary day in the most peaceful era in galactic history. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Kethavar turned to see Lieutenant Veltar, his aide, approaching with obvious distress. The young Zephyrian's usual bright blue glow had dimmed to a worried amber. "What troubles you, Lieutenant?" "We've lost contact with the Outer Rim settlements, sir." "All of them." Kethavar's crystalline structure darkened. The Outer Rim contained over 200 colonies, home to nearly 50 million beings. "Communication failures?" "No, sir." "The automated distress beacons are silent, too." "And, sir," Veltar hesitated, "the deep space monitoring stations report something else. Energy signatures unlike anything we've ever seen." Before Kethavar could respond, the station's emergency klaxons began wailing. Red warning lights bathed the observation deck as an announcement echoed through the corridors in a dozen languages. "All diplomatic staff report to the Emergency Council Chamber immediately. This is not a drill." The Emergency Council Chamber had been built 5,000 years ago but never used for its intended purpose. As representatives from across the galaxy filed in, many had to read the operating procedures from dusty manuals. The Galactic Empress herself, Sharian of the Stellar Collective, materialized as a hologram at the chamber's center. Her usual serene expression was replaced by something none had seen before: fear. "Citizens of the galaxy," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 5 millennia of peace. 37 minutes ago, we received our first communication from the entity responsible for the destruction of the Outer Rim. A massive screen descended from the chamber's ceiling. Static cleared to reveal something that defied understanding. The being that appeared was vaguely humanoid, but wrong in every way that mattered. Its skin seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Where eyes should be, there were swirling voids that hurt to look at directly. When it spoke, the words came not as sound but as thoughts forced directly into their minds. "I am Thakmor the Destroyer, Herald of the Void Lords. Your age of weakness ends now. For 5,000 years you have grown soft with peace. You have forgotten that the strong must rule and the weak must serve. We have come to remind you." The image shifted to show scenes of devastation. Planets stripped of all life. Space stations torn apart like toys. Fleets of ships reduced to cosmic dust. The destruction was total, absolute, and terrifyingly efficient. "We offer you one chance to prove you are worthy of serving us. Surrender your most powerful warriors for testing. If they can provide sport for our armies, your species may survive as slaves. If they fail," the creature gestured to the scenes of destruction, "you will join the Outer Rim in oblivion. You have 72 of your standard hours to decide." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. 5,000 years of peace had not prepared them for this. Their fleets were designed for exploration and rescue operations. Their weapons were police tools meant to stop riots, not wage war. Their soldiers were peacekeepers who specialized in de-escalation and crowd control. "What do we do?" whispered Ambassador Thisara of the Corvani Union, her feathers trembling with fear. "We need warriors," declared General Morgan of the Terran Mining Collective. "Real warriors, not peacekeepers or police. Where do we find such beings?" asked the Empress. "We've had peace for 5 millennia. We've deliberately bred the aggression out of our species." "Not all of us have," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Every head turned to see Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth. She was human, a species that had only joined the galactic community 300 years ago. They were considered a minor race, contributing little beyond agricultural products and basic manufacturing. Most of the galaxy barely noticed them. "Explain yourself, Ambassador Chen," the Empress commanded. Sarah stood slowly, her expression grim. "Your Majesty, with respect, humanity never forgot how to fight. We never stopped training warriors. We call them Marines." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The Corvani ambassador's feathers ruffled in confusion. Marines? What are these Marines? They are soldiers, General. But not like your peacekeepers. For thousands of years, humans have maintained elite military units trained for one purpose: to fight and win wars that nobody else can win. They specialize in impossible situations, overwhelming odds, and enemies that don't negotiate. Ambassador Kethvar's crystalline form flickered with uncertainty. But humans are such a peaceful species. Your contributions to the galaxy have all been in agriculture and simple manufacturing. Surely you cannot mean, we're peaceful because we choose to be. Sarah interrupted, her voice hardening. But peace is only possible when you're strong enough to defend it. We've kept that strength hidden because we hoped we'd never need it again. The Empress leaned forward in her hologram. How many of these Marines do you have? Currently active? About 200,000. But we can mobilize millions if needed. The chamber fell silent. The numbers seemed impossibly small compared to the galactic population. But something in the human ambassador's tone suggested they might be enough. And you believe these Marines can face this threat? Sarah's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Your Majesty, my people have a saying. When the world is ending, call the Marines. This Thakmor and his Void Lords are about to learn why. The silence in the emergency council chamber stretched for what felt like hours. Finally, the Empress spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Ambassador Chen, the survival of 50 billion souls across the galaxy now rests on your claim. Are you absolutely certain your Marines can face this threat? Sarah's expression never wavered. Your Majesty, I'll need to speak with my government immediately. But yes, I'm certain. This is exactly what Marines were created for. Within minutes, a secure communication channel connected the chamber to Earth's Defense Council. The holographic image of General Marcus Thompson appeared, his weathered face bearing the scars of conflicts the galaxy had never heard about. Behind him stood a figure that made several alien ambassadors step back instinctively. Sergeant Major Elena Rodriguez was not an imposing figure by alien standards. She stood barely 6 feet tall and possessed none of the crystalline beauty of the Zephyrians or the graceful features of the stellar collective. But something in her eyes, something predatory and utterly confident, spoke of violence barely contained. General Thompson, the Empress began, we require your military assistance against an unprecedented threat. Thompson nodded grimly. We've been monitoring the situation, Your Majesty. Sergeant Major Rodriguez here leads our Rapid Response Division. She's been studying the enemy transmissions. Rodriguez stepped forward. With respect, Your Majesty, this Thakmor made a critical error. He told us exactly what he is, a bully who preys on the weak. Marines eat bullies for breakfast. The Corvani ambassador's feathers trembled. Sergeant Major, you speak so casually of fighting beings that destroyed 200 worlds in hours. Sir, with respect, those worlds never fought back. They couldn't. They've been peaceful for 5,000 years. Rodriguez gestured to a datapad. I've analyzed their attack patterns. The Void Lords use fear and overwhelming force against unprepared enemies. They've never faced organized resistance. General Thompson activated a holographic display showing Earth. Your Majesty, every human colony maintains a Marine garrison. Every world has underground training facilities, weapons stockpiles, and defensive positions. We never stopped preparing for war because we know peace is temporary. The display shifted to show massive underground complexes, training grounds carved into mountains and fleets of ships unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Where galactic vessels were elegant curves designed for speed and comfort, human ships were angular blocks of armor and weapons. These are our rapid deployment cruisers, Thompson explained. Each one carries a full Marine expeditionary unit, 3,000 Marines with everything they need to fight on any world, in any environment, against any enemy. The Zephyrian ambassador's light dimmed with concern. But surely you cannot believe 3,000 warriors can stand against forces that destroyed entire star systems. Rodriguez smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Sir, you're thinking like a peacekeeper. Marines don't fight fair. We don't charge into battle hoping for the best. We study our enemy, find their weaknesses, and exploit them with extreme prejudice. She activated another display showing the destruction of the Outer Rim colonies. Look at these attack patterns. The Void Lords hit civilian targets first, then government centers, then infrastructure. They're trying to break morale before anyone can organize resistance. Classic terror tactics, and how does that help us? Asked the Empress. Because terror tactics only work on people who aren't trained to handle them. Marines train for this. We practice fighting when everything's gone wrong, when the odds are impossible, when hope is dead. That's our specialty. General Thompson leaned forward. Your Majesty, I can have the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force deployed within 12 hours. 3,000 of our best, with full support. But I need your permission to use our methods. What methods? Marines don't follow galactic rules of engagement, ma'am. We don't announce our attacks. We don't give quarter to enemies who threaten civilians, and we don't negotiate with terrorists. We find them, we fix them, and we finish them. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. The galactic civilization had built 5,000 years of peace on negotiation, compromise, and avoiding violence whenever possible. Ambassador Kethvar's crystalline form flickered nervously. General, surely some diplomatic solution. Diplomacy failed the moment Thakmor vaporized 50 million civilians. Rodriguez cut him off. This isn't a trade dispute or a border skirmish. This is extermination. You don't negotiate with people trying to commit genocide. You stop them. The Empress studied the human military leaders for a long moment. General Thompson, if we grant you this authority, what exactly do you intend to do? First, we gather intelligence. Find out where they're operating from, how their ships work, what their weaknesses are. Then we hit their supply lines, their command structure, their logistics. We make them fight our kind of war. Small unit actions, guerrilla tactics, precision strikes. We turn their strength against them, and if that fails, Thompson's expression grew cold. Then we implement the Broken Arrow Protocol, which is something we hope never to use, Rodriguez answered quietly. But it's why the galaxy has stayed peaceful for 300 years since we joined. Not because humans are naturally peaceful, but because we've made sure no one wants to find out what happens when they cross the line. The Empress made her decision. General Thompson, you have full authority to deploy your Marines and use whatever methods you deem necessary. The survival of galactic civilization is in your hands. Understood, Your Majesty. Sergeant Major Rodriguez will brief the Council on our deployment plan, while I coordinate with our fleets. Rodriguez stepped forward as Thompson's image faded. Ladies and gentlemen, in 8 hours, the Void Lords are going to discover something that no galactic citizen has learned in 5,000 years. They're going to find out why humans keep Marines. She activated a final display showing a symbol that none of the aliens recognized. An eagle, globe and anchor surrounded by words in an ancient human language. That's our motto, Rodriguez explained. Semper Fidelis. It means always faithful to our mission, our brothers, and our oath to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Sergeant Major's voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of hidden preparation. Thakmor wanted warriors to test his armies. He's about to get them. Marines don't take tests, we give them. And his forces are about to learn that when you threaten innocent people, you don't get to negotiate surrender terms. You get to die. As the alien ambassadors filed out to prepare their worlds for war, none noticed the small smile on Ambassador Chen's face. The galaxy was about to witness something that hadn't been seen in 5 millennia, humans at war. And she almost pitied their enemies. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system, like a pack of hungry wolves. Unlike the graceful, swooping lines of galactic vessels, the human ships were brutal squares of gray metal and weaponry. The flagship, HMCS Leatherneck, looked more like a flying fortress than a spacecraft. On the bridge, Colonel James Harrison studied the tactical displays with the calm focus of a man who had fought in conflicts the galaxy preferred to forget. Beside him, Major Lisa Park coordinated with ground forces while Captain Tom Mitchell analyzed enemy positions. Status report, Harrison ordered. All 6 rapid deployment cruisers are in position. Sir, Park replied. 18,000 Marines ready for immediate deployment. Intelligence drones are already gathering data on enemy positions. What are we looking at? Mitchell highlighted several points on the holographic display. The Void Lords have established a staging area on the dead world of Kepler 442b. Massive energy signatures suggest a fortress complex. They're using it as a base to launch attacks on nearby systems. Defenses? Unknown, sir. But thermal imaging shows approximately 50,000 enemy troops. Their ships appear to be organic technological hybrids. We've never seen anything like them. Harrison nodded. These were good odds for Marines. Any word from the diplomatic channel? Thakmor sent another message 2 hours ago, Park reported. He's demanding the galaxy send their strongest warriors to his fortress for testing. Says if they prove entertaining enough in combat, he might consider allowing their species to serve as slaves instead of being exterminated. Arrogant bastard, muttered Mitchell. Harrison allowed himself a small smile. Arrogance is a weakness we can exploit. What's our intelligence on these Void Lords? Preliminary analysis suggests they're energy beings inhabiting technological shells, Mitchell explained. They seem to feed on fear and suffering. Every world they've conquered, they kept the population alive just long enough to terrorize them before final extermination. Psychological warfare specialists, Harrison mused. They're used to enemies who break under pressure. Major Park, begin Operation Ghostwalk. Aye, sir. Throughout the human fleet, Marines began their final preparations. In the armory of the HMCS Devil Dog, Gunnery Sergeant Mike Chen, Ambassador Chen's younger brother, inspected his squad's equipment. Listen up. Marines, he announced to the 24 warriors under his command. Today we're writing a new chapter in Corps history. We're the first Marines to fight aliens who actually want to exterminate humanity. This is what every Marine before us trained for, even if they never knew it. Lance Corporal Jessica Martinez raised her hand. Gunny, what if their weapons are more advanced than ours? Martinez, Marine weapons aren't advanced because they're fancy. They're advanced because they work. Every piece of equipment you're carrying has been tested in real combat, by real Marines against real enemies. These Void Lords might have energy weapons and organic ships, but they've never faced Marines before. He gestured to their gear. Your rifle fires projectiles that can punch through 3 feet of steel. Your armor can survive direct hits from energy weapons. Your targeting system can track a sparrow in a thunderstorm. More importantly, your training has prepared you for every nightmare scenario we could imagine. The squad's heavy weapons specialist, Corporal David Park, grinned. Plus, we've got the good stuff for this mission. Chen nodded approvingly. That's right. Command authorized level 7 weapons for this deployment. Each squad gets 1 plasma cannon, 1 gravity manipulator, and enough high explosive ordnance to level a city block. Private Williams, the squad's youngest member, looked nervous. Gunny, what if they're too tough for our weapons to hurt? Williams, Marines have a saying. There's no such thing as overkill, only reloading. If standard weapons don't work, we use bigger weapons. If bigger weapons don't work, we get creative. And if creativity doesn't work, we call for backup and bigger explosions. On the HMCS Semper Fi, Captain Rodriguez supervised the loading of a very special cargo. The containers were unmarked, but the Marines handling them moved with extra care. Inside were weapons that hadn't been used since the Titan colony incident, things the galaxy didn't know humans possessed. Sergeant Major, called Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Kim. The reconnaissance teams are reporting back. What did they find? The Void Lords aren't just occupying that fortress, ma'am. They're building something. Energy readings suggest it's some kind of amplification device. Intelligence thinks they're planning to broadcast terror directly into the minds of every being in the galaxy. Rodriguez's expression darkened. A fear weapon. That explains why they're so confident. Orders, ma'am. Change of mission. This isn't just about stopping their invasion anymore. We need to capture that device intact so our scientists can build countermeasures. Notify all unit commanders, we're going in hard and fast. As the final preparations continued, the human fleet received an unexpected transmission. It was Ambassador Kethvar from Station Harmony. Colonel Harrison, the Zephyrian's crystalline form, flickered with anxiety. I must protest this military action. Surely there's still time for negotiations. Perhaps if we offered them tribute. Ambassador, Harrison interrupted. With all due respect, we tried your way for 5,000 years. It worked great until it didn't. Now we try the Marine way. But the casualties will be minimal on our side and total on theirs, Harrison finished. Ambassador, these beings aren't interested in coexistence. They've proven that by their actions. The only language they understand is force. Before Kethvar could respond, another transmission came through. It was Thakmor himself, the dark void of his face filled with contemptuous amusement. So the little pinkskins have sent their warriors. How delightfully naive. Very well. I shall test these Marines personally. Send them to my fortress. I promise they will provide adequate entertainment before they die screaming. The transmission ended and Harrison turned to his communications officer. Send a reply. What should I tell him, sir? Harrison's smile was colder than space itself. Tell him we accept his invitation, but inform him that Marines don't come to entertain. We come to kill. And we're very, very good at our job. As the human fleet prepared to move toward the enemy fortress, the Marines performed one final ritual that no alien had ever witnessed. In every ship, in every squad bay, the warriors knelt for 30 seconds of silent prayer, not to any god, but to the memory of every Marine who had died defending others. When they rose, they were no longer just soldiers. They were the living embodiment of humanity's promise that evil would not triumph, while Marines still drew breath. The galaxy was about to learn why humans had kept these warriors hidden for 3 centuries. And Thakmor was about to discover that when you threaten innocence, you don't get to choose how the heroes respond. The first Void Lord patrol never saw the Marines coming. Sergeant Rodriguez crouched in the shadow of a twisted metal spire, watching the alien creatures through her helmet's advanced optics. The beings moved with fluid grace across the broken landscape of Kepler 442b, their dark forms seeming to absorb the dim starlight. Intelligence had been right. They were energy beings wearing technological shells that looked like walking nightmares. Ghost 2. This is Ghost Lead, she whispered into her comm. I count 6 hostiles moving in formation Alpha 7. They're scanning for conventional energy signatures. Copy, Ghost Lead, came the reply from Corporal Jackson, positioned 200 meters to her left. They're not looking for heat or heartbeats. These things don't understand biological life forms. Rodriguez smiled grimly inside her helmet. The Void Lords had spent so long fighting energy-based beings that they'd forgotten how to detect creatures that generated heat, breathed oxygen, and had beating hearts. It was their first mistake. Ghost 3 and 4 begin flanking maneuver. Remember, we want one alive for interrogation. The Marines moved like shadows across the alien landscape. Unlike the Void Lords, who relied on energy shields and advanced sensors, the humans used terrain, patience, and 3,000 years of accumulated combat experience. They'd been perfecting these tactics since warriors first learned to hide behind rocks and strike from ambush. The lead Void Lord stopped suddenly, its form shifting as internal energies swirled. When it spoke, the words appeared directly in the minds of every living thing within a mile radius. Something disturbs the death silence of this world. Show yourselves, inferior beings, and perhaps your ending will be swift. Rodriguez held up her fist, freezing her team in place. The alien was trying to provoke them into revealing their positions. Classic mistake. The Void Lord raised what passed for its arm, and dark energy began to build around its form. I grow impatient. If you will not come to me, I shall simply destroy everything until I find you. Now, Rodriguez whispered. 4 plasma rounds struck the Void Lord simultaneously. The creature's energy shields flared and failed as the superheated gas tore through its technological shell. It collapsed with a sound like breaking glass and dying stars. The remaining 5 Void Lords spun toward the attack, their forms blazing with power. They fired beams of dark energy that should have vaporized anything they touched. Instead, the beams struck empty air where the Marines had been moments before. Impossible, one of the creatures screamed into their minds. Where are they? Corporal Jackson answered by putting 3 armor-piercing rounds through its center mass from a position 50 meters away from where he'd fired the first shot. Marines never stayed in one place after engaging the enemy. Ghost 4 has contact, came Private Williams' voice over the comm. 2 hostiles moving to flank position Charlie. Copy, Ghost 4, light them up. The battle that followed lasted exactly 47 seconds. When the last Void Lord fell, Rodriguez emerged from her concealed position and activated her helmet's recording system. Base, this is Ghost Lead. First contact complete. 6 enemies neutralized. 0 friendly casualties. These things are dangerous but predictable. They rely too heavily on energy weapons and psychological warfare. Conventional kinetic weapons are highly effective against their shells. She knelt beside one of the fallen creatures and activated her scanner. Preliminary analysis confirms intelligence reports. These are parasitic energy beings using host bodies. The shells appear to be grown rather than manufactured. Recommend immediate xenobiology analysis. Ghost Lead, this is Overwatch, came Colonel Harrison's voice. Outstanding work. What's your assessment for the main assault? Rodriguez looked toward the massive fortress complex visible on the horizon. Its twisted spires reached toward the alien sky like the fingers of a dead god. Energy readings from their position suggested thousands of Void Lords waited inside. Sir, these hostiles are used to fighting opponents who rely on the same energy-based technology they do. They've never faced kinetic weapons, biological life forms, or opponents who use cover and concealment. I recommend we exploit that advantage. Explain. They're scanning for energy signatures, psychic emanations, and technological emissions. They're not looking for heartbeats, body heat, or chemical explosives. We can get close to their fortress without being detected. And then, Rodriguez's smile would have terrified the Void Lords if they could have seen it. Then we teach them why Marines specialize in assault operations. 2 hours later, the main Marine force approached the fortress through a maze of twisted metal canyons. The Void Lords had built their stronghold in the ruins of the world's former capital city, using the death and suffering of billions of civilians to power their dark technologies. Major Park led the assault force while Rodriguez coordinated reconnaissance teams. The fortress itself was a nightmare of organic technology and crystallized suffering. Towers that pulsed with dark energy reached toward the sky, while ground-level installations hummed with the power needed to broadcast terror across the galaxy. Reconnaissance confirms 3 primary targets, Park announced to the assault commanders. The central spire houses their command center. The eastern complex contains the Fear broadcasting device. The western installation appears to be their power source. Defenses? Asked Captain Mitchell, who would lead the heavy weapons teams. Energy barriers, automated defense systems, and approximately 15,000 Void Lords. They're concentrated in the central areas, leaving the outer perimeter lightly defended. They don't expect ground assault, observed Lieutenant Kim, the explosives specialist. All their defenses are designed to stop energy-based attacks or spaceborne assaults. Park nodded. That's our advantage. Marines, this is going to be a 3-pronged assault. Alpha Company takes the power station. Bravo Company secures the broadcasting device. Charlie Company assaults the command center. We go in simultaneously and we go in hard. Gunnery Sergeant Chen checked his squad's equipment one final time. Remember, Marines, these things feed on fear and suffering. Don't give them any. When they try to get inside your heads, remember your training. When they scream about the futility of resistance, remember why we're here. Private Williams raised her hand. Gunny, what if they're right? What if we can't win? Chen's expression softened slightly. Williams, Marines don't fight because we know we can win. We fight because someone has to. These creatures murdered 50 million innocent people. They're planning to terrorize billions more. Whether we can win or not isn't the question. The question is, are we going to let evil triumph while we still draw breath? No, Gunny! That's right. Now lock and load, Marines. Time to show these nightmares what humans do to monsters. As the 3 assault forces moved into position, the Void Lords remained unaware that death was approaching their fortress. They'd grown complacent after 5,000 years of easy victories against opponents who fought by galactic rules. They were about to learn that Marines didn't follow galactic rules. Marines followed their own rules, written in the blood of every tyrant who'd ever threatened innocent people. And rule number 1 was simple. When evil shows its face, Marines don't negotiate. They don't hesitate. They don't show mercy, they just kill it. The assault began at 0300, ship time, with a sound that had never been heard on Kepler 13 in the 5,000 years since its civilization died. The distinctive crack of human rifles firing in unison. Alpha Company's attack on the power station was a textbook example of Marine doctrine. They approached through the twisted metal canyons surrounding the fortress, using terrain that the energy-based Void Lords couldn't properly scan. When they reached their objective, they didn't announce themselves with energy weapons or demand surrender. They simply blew the doors off with shaped charges and went to work. Contact front, shouted Sergeant Davis as his squad poured through the breach. The interior of the power station was a nightmare of organic technology and crystallized screams. But the Marines had trained in worse environments. The Void Lords inside reacted with confusion rather than alarm. They'd been monitoring galactic communications for weeks and knew that no one in the civilized galaxy possessed kinetic weapons or explosive charges. The very concept of chemical propellants was alien to them. What are these crude devices? One of the creatures screamed telepathically as armor-piercing rounds tore through its shell. What manner of primitive beings are these? Davis answered by loading a high-explosive round into his grenade launcher. We're Marines, asshole. Now die quietly. The explosion that followed proved that Void Lord technology, while advanced, was not designed to withstand the concentrated application of high explosives in confined spaces. Meanwhile, Bravo Company's assault on the broadcasting device was encountering stiffer resistance. The Void Lords had concentrated their strongest warriors around their most important asset, and these beings were far more dangerous than the patrol guards. Major Park ducked as a beam of dark energy vaporized the wall behind her. These weren't the crude energy weapons the galaxy used for policing. This was raw entropy given form, capable of unmaking matter at the molecular level. Heavy weapons forward. She shouted into her comm. These things have real firepower. Corporal Jackson appeared at her shoulder, carrying a weapon that technically didn't exist according to galactic law. The plasma cannon was a human invention that the diplomatic corps had agreed never to mention in polite company. Ma'am, recommend we use the good stuff now. Authorized. Light them up. The plasma cannon fired with a sound like thunder wrapped in lightning. The superheated gas struck the nearest Void Lord at temperatures approaching those found in stellar cores. The creature's energy form tried to adapt, tried to absorb the plasma into its own structure. It failed spectacularly. Jesus, whispered Private Martinez, watching as the Void Lord's shell melted and its energy form dispersed like smoke in a hurricane. What the hell are we packing? Everything, Park replied grimly. Command authorized our full arsenal for this mission. These things wanted our strongest warriors. They're getting them. But it was Charlie Company's assault on the command center that encountered the real surprise. As they breached the outer defenses, the Marines found themselves face to face with something that shouldn't have existed. Void Lords wearing power armor. What the hell? Gunnery Sergeant Chen dove behind cover as energy beams powerful enough to level buildings scorched the air around him. Intelligence didn't mention armor. The Void Lords had learned from their losses on other worlds. These elite warriors had encased themselves in technological shells designed specifically for combat. They moved with mechanical precision and fired weapons that could crack planets. Chen, this is Mitchell, came the captain's voice over the comm. We're reading massive energy signatures from your position. What's your status?
Encountering heavy resistance, sir.
These things have upgraded their equipment. Standard weapons aren't penetrating their armor. Copy. Stand by for support. What happened next was something the Void Lords had never encountered in 5,000 years of conquest. Instead of retreating in the face of superior firepower, the Marines adapted. Lieutenant Kim appeared beside Chen carrying a device that looked like a metal tube with too many buttons. Gunny, try this, and what is it? Gravity manipulator. It doesn't care how much armor they're wearing. Kim activated the device and pointed it at the nearest armored Void Lord. The warrior was in the middle of charging toward their position when local gravity suddenly reversed. The creature found itself slammed against the ceiling with a force equal to being hit by a small moon. Holy shit, breathed Chen. How long have we had these? About 200 years, Kim replied casually, adjusting the settings. We built them after the Titan colony incident. Command figured if we ever fought someone with really good armor, we'd need weapons that ignored conventional defenses. The battle for the command center turned into a running firefight through corridors that defied human understanding. The Void Lords had built their fortress according to principles of architecture that assumed energy-based beings who could phase through matter at will. They hadn't considered the possibility of physical creatures who needed to walk through doors and around corners. This gave the Marines a significant advantage. Room clear, called Corporal Williams as her squad secured another section of the command center. The Void Lords kept trying to retreat through walls, forgetting that their upgraded shells were too solid to phase through matter. But the real shock came when Charlie Company reached the central command chamber. Waiting for them was Thakmor himself, but he wasn't alone. Standing beside the Herald of the Void Lords was a figure that made every Marine in the room freeze in recognition. It was human. The man wore the tattered remains of what had once been a Galactic peacekeeper uniform. His eyes were pools of the same dark energy that filled the Void Lords, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute despair. Welcome, Marines. I am Commander Sarah Johnson, formerly of the Outer Rim Defense Force. I was the first human to face the Void Lords 3 days ago. Chen kept his rifle trained on the figure while speaking into his comm. Command, we have a problem. They've got a human collaborator. Not a collaborator, Johnson corrected, her voice echoing with unnatural harmonics. A convert. The Void Lords don't just kill Marines. They offer a choice, serve willingly or be unmade completely. I chose to serve, Thakmor's form rippled with amusement. Yes, Marines. Your own species can be turned against you. What hope do you have when even humans can see the futility of resistance? Chen's response was immediate and uncompromising. Ma'am, with all due respect, you're not human anymore, and we don't negotiate with traitors. He fired 3 rounds center mass. The corrupted human staggered but didn't fall, her body now infused with the same dark energy that powered the Void Lords. Predictable, she said sadly. Marines always choose the hard way. The final battle for the command center was about to begin, and the Marines faced something they'd never trained for, fighting one of their own who had been turned into a weapon against them. But as Gunnery Sergeant, Chen chambered another round and prepared to face this ultimate test. He remembered something his drill instructor had told him 20 years ago. Marines don't fight for humanity because humans are perfect. We fight for humanity because the alternative is unacceptable. Whatever Sarah Johnson had become, she was no longer human, and Marines had sworn an oath to protect humanity from all enemies, foreign and domestic, even the ones who used to be on their side. The battle in the command center was unlike anything the Marines had ever faced. Commander Johnson moved with inhuman speed, her corrupted form channeling dark energy that turned her into a living weapon. She knew every Marine tactic, every standard operating procedure, every weakness in their equipment and training. Chen, left flank, she called out, using her knowledge of Marine protocol against them. As Chen instinctively moved to cover the indicated position, she hit him with a blast of entropy that aged his armor by a century in seconds. Damn it. Chen rolled behind cover as his equipment began to fail. She knows how we fight. Private Williams tried to flank around the right side, but Johnson anticipated the maneuver. Standard fire team tactics, Williams. Your drill instructors taught you well. The dark energy blast sent Williams flying across the chamber, her rifle shattering against the wall. Thakmore observed the battle with growing satisfaction. You see, Marines? Even your own kind can be turned against you. Your resistance is futile. Surrender now, and perhaps some of you will be allowed to serve as I have allowed her to serve. But Gunnery Sergeant Chen had been a Marine for 20 years, and he'd learned something that Johnson had apparently forgotten. Marines didn't just follow tactics and procedures, they improvised, adapted, and overcame. Williams Kim Martinez forget standard tactics. This isn't a training exercise anymore. He activated his emergency beacon, sending a signal that was received simultaneously by Colonel Harrison in orbit and by every Marine unit in the fortress. All units. This is Chen. Execute Broken Arrow Protocol. Repeat. Broken Arrow Protocol is now authorized. The response was immediate. Throughout the fortress, Marines began implementing procedures that weren't in any official manual. These were the tactics they'd hoped never to use. The weapons they'd prayed would never be necessary. In the power station, Sergeant Davis activated a device that had been hidden in his pack's false bottom. The antimatter charge was roughly the size of a baseball and contained enough destructive force to level several city blocks. Evacuation in T-minus 60 seconds, he announced to his squad. Move, move, move! At the broadcasting station, Major Park's team deployed something even more exotic. A quantum disruptor that attacked the fundamental forces holding matter together. The Void Lord's organic technology, which relied on energy-matter conversion, simply ceased to exist when exposed to the field. But it was in the command center that the most devastating weapon was about to be unleashed. Lieutenant Kim activated his personal emergency kit and pulled out a device that looked like nothing more than a small metal sphere. To the corrupted Johnson, it appeared harmless, just another piece of Marine equipment. She was wrong. Kim, what is that? Chen asked, not taking his eyes off their opponents. A prototype psych weapon, Gunny. It broadcasts pure human emotion directly into the minds of anyone within range. Johnson laughed, her voice echoing with Thakmore's amusement. Emotions? You think feelings can harm beings of pure energy? Kim's smile was grimmer than death itself. Not just any emotions, ma'am. This device is loaded with something the Void Lords have never experienced in their entire existence. He activated the sphere. What followed was impossible to describe in words. The device broadcast the collective emotional memory of every human who had ever lived. 5,000 years of love, hope, sacrifice, and determination flooded the command center in a psychic wave that hit the energy-based beings like a tsunami of light. Thakmore screamed, not telepathically, but with a sound like reality itself tearing apart. For creatures that fed on fear, despair, and suffering, the pure undiluted essence of human hope was literally toxic. Impossible, he shrieked as his form began to destabilize. How can you weaponize such weakness? It's not weakness, Chen replied, advancing on the Herald of the Void Lords with his rifle raised. It's what makes us human, and it's something you'll never understand. The corrupted Commander Johnson staggered as the psychic weapon affected her as well, but instead of being harmed by it, the human emotions began to burn away the dark energy that had infected her mind. I remember, she gasped, her voice becoming more human with each word. I remember why I became a peacekeeper. I remember what I was fighting to protect. Thakmor turned toward her with growing rage. No, I gave you power. I gave you purpose. You cannot return to your pathetic weakness. It's not weakness, Johnson replied, and for the first time since her corruption, she smiled. It's humanity. She turned her energy-infused abilities against Thakmor himself, channeling the same human hope that was destroying him through her attacks. The Herald of the Void Lords found himself assaulted not just by marine weapons, but by the very concept of creatures who fought not for power or dominance, but for love. The explosions from the power station and broadcasting facility reached them as tremors through the fortress. The entire complex was beginning to collapse as the Marines systematically destroyed everything the Void Lords had built. Chen, this is Harrison, came the colonel's voice over the comm. Fortress destruction is proceeding ahead of schedule. What's your status? Mission accomplished, sir. The Herald is neutralized and we've recovered a friendly casualty. Thakmor's form was fading, his energy dissipating as the psychic weapon continued to broadcast human emotions that were antithetical to his very existence. With his last coherent thought, he sent a message to his scattered forces. Retreat. These are not the weak beings we expected. These creatures weaponize their very weakness. They are dangerous. As the Void Lord's remaining forces fled the system, Commander Johnson collapsed. The dark energy finally purged from her system by the concentrated essence of human hope and determination. Thank you, she whispered to Chen as the Marines prepared to evacuate the collapsing fortress. Thank you for not giving up on me. Ma'am, Chen replied, helping her to her feet. Marines don't leave anyone behind, not even when they've been turned into a weapon against us. The evacuation of the fortress was completed with typical Marine efficiency. As their dropships lifted off from the dying world, the Marines watched the entire complex collapse in on itself, taking with it the Void Lord's plans for galactic domination. But the real victory wasn't the destruction of the fortress or the defeat of Thakmor. The real victory was proving that there were some things in the universe that couldn't be corrupted, couldn't be broken, and couldn't be turned against themselves. Things like hope. Things like determination. Things like the refusal to abandon your principles even when facing impossible odds. Things that made humans Marine-worthy. As the fleet prepared to return to civilized space, Colonel Harrison received a transmission from the Galactic capital. It was the Empress herself, and for the first time in recorded history, she was crying tears of relief. Colonel Harrison, she said, her voice filled with wonder. How did you do it? How did you defeat beings of pure energy with weapons and tactics? Harrison's response would become legendary throughout the galaxy. Your Majesty, the Void Lords made one critical error. They assumed that because we were flesh and blood, we were weak. They never considered that flesh and blood might be exactly what made us strong. 3 months after the Battle of Kepler 442b, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again on the observation deck of Station Harmony, but everything had changed. Where once elegant, swooping alien vessels had dominated the space lanes, now the angular gray shapes of human warships patrolled alongside them. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the price of peace, and they were taking no chances with their security. Remarkable, said Ambassador Kethavar, his crystalline form glowing with a mixture of admiration and unease. I must confess, Ambassador Chen, that I never imagined your species possessed such capabilities. Sarah nodded, watching as a squad of Marines conducted a routine patrol through the station's corridors. The sight of armed humans moving through the heart of galactic civilization would have been unthinkable just months ago. Now it was a comfort to every being on the station. We tried to tell you, she replied diplomatically. Humans are peaceful by choice, not by nature. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of General Thompson and Colonel Harrison, both men looking far more relaxed than they had during the crisis. Behind them walked Commander Johnson, fully recovered from her ordeal and wearing the uniform of the newly created Galactic Defense Force. Ambassador, Thompson nodded to Chen before addressing the assembled diplomatic corps. I've come to deliver the final report on the Void Lord threat. The briefing room filled quickly. Representatives from across the galaxy wanted to hear the official assessment of the crisis that had nearly ended their civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, Thompson began. 3 months ago, the galaxy faced its first existential threat in 5 millennia. Today, I'm pleased to report that the threat has been completely neutralized. A holographic display showed star charts marking the former Void Lord territories. Our combined human galactic fleets have swept the entire outer rim. The remaining Void Lord forces have retreated beyond our sensor range, and intelligence suggests they're unlikely to return. The Empress herself materialized as a hologram at the front of the room. General Thompson, on behalf of the galaxy, I want to express our deepest gratitude for humanity's service. You saved us all. Thank you, Your Majesty. But more importantly, this crisis has taught us all valuable lessons about the nature of peace and security. Ambassador Thesara of the Corvani Union raised a tentacle nervously. General, what changes can we expect to galactic defense policy? Thompson nodded to Colonel Harrison, who activated another display. The Galactic Council has approved the establishment of the Galactic Defense Force, a permanent military organization tasked with protecting all member worlds from external threats. And humanity will lead this force? Asked the Zephyrian ambassador. Actually, no, Harrison replied, surprising everyone in the room. The GDF will be a truly galactic organization. Humans will provide training, equipment, and tactical doctrine, but every species will contribute personnel and resources. Commander Johnson stepped forward. I've been appointed as the first director of the GDF Academy. We'll be training beings from across the galaxy in modern military tactics, not to make them into warriors, but to ensure that what happened to the Outer Rim never happens again. The implications were staggering. For the first time in 5,000 years, the galaxy would have a real military force, not peacekeepers or police, but soldiers trained to fight and win wars against any threat. But surely, protested the Corvani ambassador, this militarization goes against everything our civilization has stood for. It was Sarah Chen who answered, Ambassador, 5,000 years of peace is an incredible achievement. But peace without the strength to defend it is just a temporary truce. The Void Lords taught us that there are forces in the universe that don't respect diplomacy, don't honor treaties, and don't care about our values. The galaxy needs guardians, added Thompson, beings willing to stand between civilization and chaos, not because they love war, but because they love peace enough to fight for it. Over the following weeks, the transformation of galactic society continued at an unprecedented pace. Human military advisors were stationed on every major world, training local defense forces in tactics that had been perfected over millennia of human conflict. On Zentara Prime, Corporal Jackson taught stellar collective security forces how to use cover and concealment. The elegant beings struggled with the concept of hiding behind obstacles, having relied on energy shields for protection for thousands of years. But this seems so primitive, complained one of his students. Ma'am, Jackson replied patiently, there's nothing primitive about staying alive. A rock that stops enemy fire is just as effective as an energy shield, and it doesn't run out of power. On Corvani, Sergeant Davis found himself teaching feathered beings how to use explosives. The naturally peaceful species had never considered that sometimes you needed to destroy things to protect other things. Remember, he told his class of nervous recruits, explosives aren't about destruction. They're about removing obstacles that stand between you and your mission. Sometimes that obstacle is a locked door. Sometimes it's an enemy fortress. But the principle is the same. Clear the path and complete the mission. But perhaps the most significant change was happening on Earth itself. The planet that had been considered a minor agricultural world was now revealed as the most heavily fortified world in the galaxy. Underground bases, orbital defense platforms, and training facilities that had been hidden for centuries were suddenly visible to galactic sensors. Sergeant Major Rodriguez found herself giving tours to alien diplomats who wanted to understand how humans had maintained their warrior culture during 5,000 years of galactic peace. You have to understand, she explained to a group of wide-eyed Zephyrian observers, peace isn't natural for humans. We have to work at it. That work includes staying ready to defend it. She gestured to a group of Marine recruits running obstacle courses that would have challenged Olympic athletes. Every human world maintains a military academy. Every human child learns basic survival and combat skills. Not because we want to fight, but because we want to be ready if someone forces us to fight. But why did you hide this from us? Asked one of the diplomats. Rodriguez's smile was sad but understanding. Because the galaxy wasn't ready to know that humans kept warriors. You'd spent 5,000 years believing that violence was obsolete, that civilization had evolved beyond the need for soldiers. We didn't want to disrupt that beautiful dream. And now you know that dreams need guardians to protect them. The final ceremony took place 1 year after the Battle of Kepler 442b. On a space station at the edge of former Void Lord territory, representatives from across the galaxy gathered to dedicate the memorial to the Outer Rim. The monument was simple, a black wall bearing the names of every being who had died in the Void Lord attacks. But at its center stood something that had never been seen before in galactic architecture, a statue of a human marine, rifle in hand, standing guard over the names of the fallen. The inscription was written in every galactic language, but the words were pure human philosophy. Greater love has no being than this, that they lay down their life for others. As the ceremony concluded, Ambassador Chen found herself standing beside the Empress, both women looking out at the mixed fleet of human and alien vessels that now patrolled the galaxy's borders. Ambassador, the Empress said quietly, I have a confession to make. Your Majesty, when your Marines first deployed, I was terrified, not of the Void Lords, but of what would happen after they were defeated. I feared that humans would use their military power to dominate the galaxy. Chen nodded. Many species worried about that, Your Majesty. It's a natural concern. But you haven't. Instead, you've shared your strength with us. You've taught us to defend ourselves rather than making us dependent on you. Why? Sarah's answer came from 3 centuries of human philosophy and hard-won wisdom. Your Majesty, humans learned long ago that true strength isn't about dominating others. True strength is about protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The galaxy gave us 300 years of peace and prosperity. This is how we repay that gift. As the mixed fleet of guardians continued their patrol, watching for threats that might never come, the galaxy settled into its new reality. Peace was still the goal. Diplomacy was still the preferred method of solving problems, and civilization still valued cooperation over conflict. But now they had guardians, beings willing to stand in the darkness so that others could live in the light. Warriors who fought not for conquest or glory, but for the simple right of peaceful beings to exist without fear. The galaxy had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice backed by the willingness to defend it. And somewhere in the depths of space, if any Void Lords still existed, they would think twice before threatening a galaxy protected by Marines.